Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Conkin, Trainer and Assessor for Hayter Institute of Education. And tonight we are, as a team and a class, doing Session 3 CHCDFV001, and it's our final session. And here is some information for any student who wishes to get additional support. So, as you know, we run the classes as a team. And anyone who wishes to do one-on-one, you all have a 30-minute once a fortnight. So you can get student support, all your role plays done, and you can book them. And what you've got there is a particular email for myself, or you can get straight into Calendly and book with myself. You'll see times available, or you can also book with other trainers, see what times they've got available. That's another link. Down here, we've just got some support phone numbers for anyone who needs additional support, even for study or stress. So if you want to, you'll see these in the playback. Anyone who wants to at the moment, quickly take a picture of the screen if they so wish. So what I was wondering is, we are a collective little community. So I was wondering, would you like to actually read this together? Because what I've found is that we're reading it and waiting for someone to read, but I'd really like to see if we can put a little bit more of a community spirit into reading this together. If you just want to mumble along, please do.
I'll read it for you if you like.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice if we all got into it together, Tim. I'd love to do it with you.
Yeah, well, I'd love to do it because I'm sort of a bad one for it. My family are Freemasons. My pop served the crown, and we were sort of given a whole pile of land for our services to the crown. So I feel really bad and need to give a lot of reconciliation to the Indigenous people and the custodial landowners in some way.
Yeah.
Now
Well,
and in the future.
yeah. Well, would anyone else like to join Tim and I? Please do. And we can do it collectively, and let's start. So, in the spirit of reconciliation, Hayter Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians
of the
of the
land
land
in
in which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual, and cultural of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people, acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. Thank you, everyone, because that is a collective message, and I don't mind that we weren't all on time. That's not the point of that one. Thank you. So we do have class breaks. We were so into it last week that we actually only had one. My apologies. That was an awesome class. I will attempt to have two or one longer one so everyone can regroup. Please smoke or vape off screen. Also, please put your black screen on and enjoy your meal if you want to eat. We don't mind. Cameras on when you can, though, if you want, because it's lovely to see your faces. Again, lots of class participation. I do want to just confirm again that the class participation needs to be on task, but I also want to congratulate everyone because you actually have been on point. No one has gone off point and run the show themselves. So I have to say it's a really, really great effort. It's difficult to have such personal information and not feel like you want to go up and share your story. It's actually a natural thing to do. But everyone's been incredibly respectful and made sure that their contributions for the class and really helped with some discussion. So let's do it again, guys. Trigger warning. As you know, this is a difficult subject, so if you need to take a break, please take one. If you need to stay behind at the end, I am here for you. If you do need to exit the class because you're feeling that anxiety build, I would recommend that you do, to not escalate any pressure for yourself. Just give me a thumbs up so I know you're good. Give me a little bit of a wave. I really want everyone to look after themselves. It's an emotionally heightened content. Microphones on mute, except that when we do our great discussions, which we're going to do. Can't congratulate you all enough for respectful relationships. Unreal. Everyone's been very supportive. Last week, quite a lot of people stayed behind to actually encourage each other. So good to see. Be kind to yourself. Well, that's about self-care, and the good news is that's your next subject. So we get to do a lot of kindness to self coming up, everyone. It's going to be a lot easier subject coming. So what we've got tonight in store is rights and responsibilities of the clients. We're going to look at identifying the client's needs again, but more specifically. Then we'll look at those needs for assessment. How do we assess those needs once they've been identified? And then what are we going to do once they're assessed? How are we actually going to respond? And then once we know what we're going to do, we're going to look at how to refer. So what we're coming back to now is, if I just come back up to this slide here, you've got your rights and responsibilities. We won't cover a lot of that tonight, but I'll show you some paperwork around that after. Let's look down now, identifying client needs. So as you know, what you've got is we're doing questionnaires, case documents, classification tools, and info from service providers. So I want to come up to the questionnaires, and I'll stop sharing this screen. And I'll share the questionnaires that we have. These are the ones that actually come from First Access, and they are the ones that they are recommending for this, and it's the client's needs assessment form. So this is a more basic one, and as you can see, it's just got the indicators of harm. So this is what we're going to discuss in a minute. We're going to actually discuss as a class what are the indicators, and this is where they'd get put in the form. So we're going to get really, really good at knowing what the indicators are, because that's the very first step of being able to actually help someone, is identify the need, and then we can move into assessment. So the next step we're going to do after this is we're going to do some teamwork on indicators, but this is the report section where you'd be writing the indicators down. And then you're starting to assess. So you can see what's happening. And now you're going to look at, I can see the need. And now how am I going to do it? The need is always for protection. So we're going to look for indicators tonight together. We're then going to look at how do we assess. And then the next thing we're going to do this evening is, this is the safety plan. So that's the main procedure tonight, is to actually learn those steps. And then the next step we'll be doing is referral. So pretty much this safety plan is simply 4 sections of the 4 steps which we're going to do tonight. The other documents that we're going to do is, this is a slightly different needs analysis. And that's really just where we're taking personal details. But the one we're mainly doing this evening is the identify, assess, and then we're looking at prioritize. This is simply taking recorded information. There's a little bit of history in this section, and possibly some triggers. We're taking in here just basic information about the person. But what we're mostly going to do tonight is work on the other forms. So what we're going to do is come back to our main PowerPoint. So your questionnaires, as you saw, they're the safety plans. I'll let somebody in. Then the case documents is where you saw we're writing it down. In those sections is where we're going to put all the facts. The other areas that we identify is classification tools. But the most important thing, which was the start of that whole section, was identifying the threats and risks. So what we're going to do is decide now as a group, and we're going to go into breakout rooms. What we're going to do is I'm going to give one room the physical abuse, one for psychological, financial, and neglect. And what we're going to ask you to do is, if you're going to identify, what indicators would you see? How would psychological abuse show up? So indicators, an example for psychological obviously might be anxiety attacks. Now the next section that I'd like, so I'd love a list of the indicators that you might see. And then I'd love some more of the behavioural signs. So someone with anxiety attacks may also have some low self-esteem, more of the behaviours. What would that anxiety look like on a person? So you might have depression might be an indicator, but what behaviours would that depression be? An example would be that the person's not getting out of bed, they're not turning up to work. So that's where we extend on, I've seen the indicator and what that would look like in their home life, in their habits, in their practices, in their social life. So we've got to just take it a bit further. So we'll stop sharing now, and we've got, I've got to do my maths, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all good, pairs, and we've got 5, and we have 5 types of abuse. So let's get in, and I'll just stop recording and we'll get into breakout rooms. Hey, welcome back everyone. This is a tough one, but it's an important one, because some of these things are what the clients will present and say to you or show to you. So we're also looking for things that they may not say. So who would like to go first? Anybody? Yes, Cass? Help us know
I'll
this.
go first. So myself and Mahalia agreed that with psychological abuse, because it's like the indicators and the behaviors of psychological abuse are quite similar
Yeah.
to one another. And I guess because it's not a physical thing, but as indicators, we have withdrawing and shutting off, insomnia. Insomnia could be a behavior as well, because I guess if it's a behavior, it's noticed by other. I don't know. Yeah, it's a fine line. Low self-esteem, uncooperative and aggressive, change of appetite, increased anxiety. And then the behaviors, we were like the change of behaviors when a certain person enters the room.
Yes, yes.
Could definitely be one. Being hypervigilant, or making accusations or criticizing, name calling and verbal abuse. I guess it depends if you want the behaviors of the perpetrator or of the. I think there's more of the victim, but they might mirror.
But you're exactly right, because what happens is a big indicator is really extreme challenging behavior.
So we had the aggressive and uncooperative as well, and that's an indicator, but it's also a behavior. So it was.
You're right. They actually can become quite abusive in nature, which is what makes this so confusing. As you say, they can either just go very passive and not sleep, and
we've got withdrawn and shut off,
and isolated, or they go the other way. And I think you've nailed it on the head, because what we're looking for is an extreme change. And in this particular case, both of the symptoms seem to be at either end.
I think the biggest one in behaviours was the change of behaviour if someone entered the room. So if
Yes.
you know, the perpetrator walked in the room. I mean, you don't even have to be in a clinical setting. It could just be with your family to notice those behaviours. It don't have to be a one-on-one behaviour. But yeah, if someone enters the room, your demeanour could change, your expression to be yourself could change. Everything can change.
Yeah. And that's where they've written it here is marked decrease, which means, as you say, they're not their usual self. And in interpersonal skills. So that is someone who then would shy away or will show a reaction.
And I think they could get very defensive as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, very defensive.
So what we're looking at here is with the psychological, just imagine that generally speaking, if we have a range, most people are in the middle most of the time. And we all swing a little high or low. But these people would go from their middle, because everyone's middle is different, and they will go one way or another, and sometimes they will oscillate like a fan between the two and have quite erratic mood changes. But what they're presenting, you've hit the nail on the head. It's extreme passiveness or extreme aggressiveness. So also know with that aggressiveness, sometimes it's an attention-seeking behavior. So it may not just always be anger, but it will be they're seeking some extreme attention. So there can be very attention-seeking behavior. That's one way. The other thing to add there too is very, very compliant. So that's where they're swinging the other way. So they're disagreeable or incredibly agreeable. So what we're looking for here is emotional states that are very extreme and changeable and different to what's there. So Tim, you said that you did psychological as well. You've put a note there and you've got a couple more to add.
Yeah, we've got a few here. Heidi's got them written down. I just agree with you on that. I often become a yes man, and I often become what was the topic you were just saying before that? I totally agree with both those things that you just said, because I actually do them myself, to the point that I sort of self-destruct my life, just to have those attention that I never really got as a child or as an adolescent. So they're very big ones. I'm glad you brought that up. It really taught me something just then about myself, if you know what I mean. So Heidi might read out a few other ones that we've got there.
Yes, please. Heidi, were you going to read some?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I was talking.
Okay.
So indicators, behaviors, sorry. We had sleeping.
Yep.
Sleeping lots. Or would that be an indicator?
No, that can be a behavioural sign. So yeah, it's difficult. The indicator might be that their anxiety has them actually sleeping less.
Yeah.
Indicator of depression, and then it would show up as a behaviour of sleeping more.
Yeah. Self-isolating.
Yeah.
Self-construction.
Yeah.
Withdrawal. Yeah. And then the indicators can be impulse buying.
To get some equilibrium. Yeah.
Yeah. That's about it really that we had written down.
And in this section, because it can lead to chronic low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Personality
had that written down. Yeah.
Drastically. Then because if they embody and believe in that low self-worth, which can happen.
Yeah.
And they internalize it, that's when we can see some self-harming, self-abusive behaviors. So one of the indicators may be a change of self-esteem, but some of those behaviors may show up differently. Everyone shows self-esteem differently. And as you say, Heidi, they may go through manic spending just to feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
And that's where this is just extreme behaviors that under that middle range. And so they may have some abusive behaviours, and that can be shown as we had the change of appetite. So some people who are trying to gain some emotional control may control their food. It just gives them that little one area. They may not have much control in other ways, but they will seek control. And that's what we're really looking for. So Mahalia, you've put your hand up.
Sorry, agree with that one. The so I have a anorexia.
Yes.
Have for years. And that's how I deal with my trauma, is that's the way I've coped.
Yeah.
Different swing of different like I used to self-harm quite a lot from a young age, right up until the last year or two. It's really slowed down, but you know, I could swing off different things like the eating disorder, self-harm, different ways.
And that's I guess that's you're explaining to us really well from a personal experience. The behaviours change.
Yeah. So mine's always changed. Like when I'm doing well, I'm able to regulate moods easier. My everything eating becomes a bit easier, but when things are not great, that's when everything slides.
And I guess what you're explaining to us too, which is so helpful, the degree of how extreme this behaviour is shown to us is maybe the degree of which the person feels they're out of control. So that's so helpful.
Yeah, like it took
give us an indicator of where the indicator would be on a scale.
And that's where I want to also help, like, you know, doing this course and going into mental health is also helping other mental health professionals from a personal point of view, that certain things are helpful when to listen to your client, especially. You know, I went through admission to hospital a couple months, like last month or something, for a couple of weeks for refeeding, and you know, just getting that help for myself, having to advocate as well, was really hard.
Wow, you were self-advocating at the hospital, no one there.
Well, yeah, like I had to, you know, advocate to get into the hospital, and you know, you know,
so
I got told, I got told it was fine, it's fine, and you know, you're not that bad, and until I went there, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll keep you for 2 weeks. So,
well, you're so brave for sharing that with us. Thank you. Because it is really helpful for us, because another way that people can sometimes try and gain control is by masking and putting it on. You know, I got this, you know, and we put the cape on. It's
I do that until I can't.
Yeah, this is very confusing, but this is the start, as you say. We can't connect to the person. Don't worry about referring them to someone else if we're not getting it right. Cass, you've got your hand up. Thank you, Mahalia.
So I was paired with Mahalia, and we both have the same thing in common. We both have eating disorders.
Yeah.
And sorry, my bird.
I love it.
You can have her. But so when it comes to like the eating disorders and the self-harm thing, like it's weird because it's more of a control thing. So like when I'm stressed out or if I'm in a bad mood, I have episodes of purging, but it's the feeling that you're addicted to. So it's the self-harm, the feeling you're addicted to. It's the endorphins that your body releases. So I also do it to congratulate myself. As crazy as that sounds, I also do it when I've done good, because I feel like I've done good. You deserve to have this feeling. And that feeling, stop. Sorry, that it's a feeling that you're addicted to. And yeah, so it kind of works. It works both ways, especially when it comes to self-harm, because it releases those chemicals in your body.
It actually releases serotonin.
And so that's my problem, is the dopamine or whatever, the serotonin that gets released in your body. Like, so I was told to put my face in a bowl of ice water until I literally feel like I'm going to drown.
Yep.
Wow.
Did you get told that too, Mahalia? Like, so
something I was taught in DBD or something.
Yeah. So if you've actually, it releases the same chemicals that your body does when you put your body into shock, but it's an addiction. It is, and it's hard. Like, so it can be when I'm in a bad moment, but when I'm in a good moment, I can think I can make this even better, and I can have this feeling too. So sorry, it's probably way off topic, but just
No,
if
it's
other
complete.
people-
It is completely on topic, girls, because
Yeah,
what we're realizing and what we did last week was we mainly discussed in detail the whole last week how complex this is.
Well, that's when they say like abstinence and then minimalization. Like, I know how much I need to not do it, but I kind of want to do it. If that, I don't know. It's hard.
Once you're in that state, like I always find that once I'm in that state, I find it really hard to stop. Like once
I'm on day 1 now, which was yesterday was day 1. So day 1 doesn't happen very often. I got to day 9 once.
Yeah.
But I've never been past day 2 since then. Like I get a 1 day.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. I guess the behaviors that every sort of abuse or anything like that. But I have a dark background and stuff. So there's not that there's reasons to do things, but it might be something that you think that people don't like doing, but psychologically, you're trying to talk me out of this. I got taken out of therapy because I wasn't progressing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to stop it because it made me feel good.
And this is where it's very challenging, because the next stage we've got to do is assess the risk for this person. And so we really do need to be in touch with these signs. And we also need to be in touch as that these behaviors are not necessarily right or wrong. They're coping strategies.
That's right. And I'm like the happiest person ever.
Yeah. You can't just say we're going to get rid of these.
I've got nothing going on in my life right now.
Yeah.
I'm not suffering from anything else. Yeah. I have my demons in the back of my brain, but I have no reason to self-harm right now. But
what we've got is patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a pattern. What happens, doesn't matter what the pattern actually is. Not that I'm downplaying that, girls, but we can have, benign routines that are patterns. But we're humans who like patterns. So even if you intellectually know, and this is where you're going to be challenged helping clients, and you're also going to have a lot of compassion. They're going to circle back to you, maybe back down to the start. We get a boost of anxiety when we go to break a pattern. And that's not necessarily even something as challenging as gripping as this. And this is a pattern where something that you do gives you a good feeling. Any pattern, any neural pathway that we're wired in our brain by repeatedly doing, when we change that pattern, we automatically have a stress response.
So I give myself, this is crazy, right? I give sometimes when I'm in that state, which is most days, I give myself an allowance. So I will allow myself once a day.
Yeah.
Like instead of traumatizing my body and even the bruises I have on my body just from kneeling down on the floor, for God's sake, in front of a toilet. But I'll give myself an allowance. It's I don't know. It's just how in depth that one thing in particular can be.
Yeah. So this is really complex, because what we're doing is we're working with someone who feels out of control, and there is right reasons to be with domestic family violence. Even when it's finished, there's a residue, especially the psychological. They're going to want to gain control. And as I think Tim mentioned as well, that excessive crazy seeking behavior doesn't seem rational, but it gives someone something. It gives them a way of getting some equilibrium. And this is where we've really got to know the person before we can really know their needs and start assessing and start referring. We've got to know, how does this work for you? What do you get from this? Because then we've got to look at how we can get them to get it in another way, and hopefully not ice water on your face. Something a little bit more enjoyable and sustainable.
It can actually be fun, especially if you join the whole family. And
so
I, instead of taking that road, I took the ice bowl thing, and it was literally a bowl of ice had been in the freezer for half a day, and I was doing it with my son. So it became a competition, and it became fun.
It became fun.
So, it hurt because
yeah.
my face was frozen, but
it's an interrupter. So
Yeah,
what happens is it interrupts. So what we're looking at here is these are complex issues. Renee, I'll just help it. We're going to have a lot of patience and a lot of intuition and a lot of good questions, guys. So this is where we've got to ask the right questions about the support and make no assumptions and make sure they have choice and voice. So we've got financial and neglect. Who was in there? Because these can show up with self-harm behaviours too. Thanks, Tim. Sounds like we've got a lot of brave individuals here who are going to give some amazing peer support. There's a lot of government jobs now in the mental health, and they're only interested in peer support. You cannot get the job unless you've had lived experience. So I think this is a great way the industry is going. Who had some neglect? Because this can often happen for children. We may want to be, because it is family violence. Did anyone do neglect? No, I'll read some of the neglect. Obviously, you've got weight changes if there is changes to food, but you can see dental can often be a neglect. So, and that might be even just a neglect that the person has for themselves. We've obviously got the same clothing or unwashed clothes or not caring, but then that can show up as those behaviours as always being hungry. It can show up as constant tiredness, loss of communication skills, and then some of the behaviours is that person might not be able to get employment. Yep, so they may actually be having challenges with actually getting jobs. So they may come to you with some employment issues. And then if you go back from the employment issues as to what's happening for them, it may be a physical presentation. Thanks, Tim. Gosh. Financial, did anyone do financial? Go, Jess, help us, because this is so complex. The more we know, the better.
Maybe Renee and I could probably bounce off each other because Renee had quite a bit too.
Great.
You want to go first,
We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I've just been writing it all down.
Thank you.
Financial abuse. They control access to the money where you don't get any access to.
Yeah.
And they scrutinize your spending, like monitoring your spending. They hide funds from you, like you notice like unusual transactions that you don't know what's going on there. They force you to deposit your income into a bank account you don't have access to.
Wow. Yeah.
They have racked up credit card debts in your name. Did you want to say something, Deb?
Yeah, no, that's okay. I also had they make you ask for permission to use money. They may deny your access to phone, internet. They might prevent you from working or studying, so you're not actually earning any money. So they're controlling your behaviour by doing that. I also had maybe some of the behaviours. A person might be quite embarrassed or to go out anywhere with family and friends because one, they don't have money to pay for anything.
Yeah, there's social changes, isn't there?
Yes, they physically don't want to say, I don't have the money, so they make up excuses. So I guess they could then in turn become quite restricted and I'm trying to think of, I guess, isolated because they can't go anywhere or
the isolation can almost come into all of them, can't it? Because if it's physical, then you don't go out while you've got evidence. But not having money is evidence too. Yeah. So the sad thing is that these people suffering in this area tend to actually have a shrinking support network. So the other things with finance, if someone was to just mention to you that they're having to have their will changed in financial abuse, they'll get wills changed. They'll also put houses in the other person's name and not theirs. So you're looking at some of the legal things and banking in big stakes of someone's pensions, things like that too. Great job, guys, because I think we really showed tonight that this is multifaceted and it's also very personal. Yeah. So we'll get back to sharing as well, and we'll get back to our screen. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and get our screen on advanced. See if we can get this going. There we go. So now we're at the point, if we just backtrack, we looked at how do we identify and how do we look at the threat to safety, because some of those particular behaviours that we mentioned are quite serious and sometimes the person isn't safe from themselves. So this is where we've got to look at support, and we all got together and did an amazing job. Then what we're going into the next step, once we've looked at the identifiers, we're now looking at their needs, but also their rights. And obviously, if they are needing economical support, then that can come through us taking them to Centrelink, getting them to get access to their own bank accounts. It may be that we can get food vouchers. It might be that we can get taxi vouchers. So this person has lost their control of their economics, and then we can actually help them get that. That might be, they have the right to that, and we can actually look at that as saying we can identify your need. We can identify the abuse and some of the behaviours that you're dealing with, and now we can go back to seeing how we can actually get some of your needs met. The access to the services and information, obviously we can look at getting some mental health services. It might be that we can even get some dental services. So this is where we're now going, okay, what would we be looking at getting these people? And then that's before we then work with referral. So ongoing assessments, obviously, we're going to look at people here. It is not going to be a one visit. They're going to have ongoing, we're going to need to continue to keep the assessment up, which is where we then become a case manager, because it's not a one visit. This is then when we get up to the referrals to the special services. With the referrals to the services, that's where we're recognising our boundary, and that referrals to the services is that this is now something that we can't offer. It's beyond our scope. So we're a support worker, but we're not a counsellor. So the referrals is a boundary line. They've got rights of safety. So for some people, it might be actually getting them a safe place to live. Our rights of safety, that needs might be met by actually involving the police with a domestic violence apprehension order. We may need to actually help them with some legal aid. Everyone's going to be different. So they may actually need to have some access to some free services. Confidentiality and consent is obviously a right no matter what we're doing, and so is the Workers' Code of Ethics. Now, as you know, if we circle back to week 1, because domestic family violence is an imbalance of power, there were a number of particular groups of people who are more subjected to domestic family violence in the percentages that we know of. I'm sure there's much we don't know. And the reason that is that they're already vulnerable, and that was children. But it was also cultural, religious, sexual identity, age and disability. So we've got to just now consider, if we're working with these groups of people, they would have additional special needs, not just your typical, let's go legal aid, let's involve the police. Can we have a bit of a share from your experience, what you think we'd have to be more considerate of when working with people in these groups, because they are in the clientele for domestic family violence? So if we just start even with, let's go down the bottom to disability. What additional needs do you think we'd have to be considerate of when we're looking at this stage before we refer. Has anyone had any clients they've been working with for disability? Cass, you went to say something?
Sorry, accessibility, like being able to access.
Yes.
And get places, and communication.
Yeah. So with the disability, some people choose not to get help because, as we mentioned last week with the complex, there is actually the trauma bond. In some cases, the very people who may be looking after them are abusing them, and that may be their only support system. So the disability would have quite a different number of needs, and we'd end up then referring to NDIS, and it becomes a specialised case. So with age, we've obviously possibly got to consider looking at aged care facilities and something that's more age appropriate. The sexual identity, does anyone want to add anything there that they think? What you've got is special services in most companies. So Relationships Australia is across the entire of Australia, and they actually have specialised services for people who are challenged with mental health with sexual identity. So we would be looking for a specialised counsellor. We may even be looking for support groups where they can actually relate to people in the groups. And then the religious and the cultural as well. We've really got to be considerate there, be more culturally sensitive. And then with the religious, obviously, we've got to take in mind that some people have different belief systems. So one of the things we need to be very considerate of here is watching our biases, because there may be a religious belief about that their husband or wife, can be either way, but their partner, that they need to be submissive to a partner. That could be a religious belief as well. So this is going to take, these particular groups are going to take more compassion and more specialised resources. So we've now got to the point where you're doing a proper client assessment and you're going to look at actually allocating some of these services. You've seen the indicators, you've looked at the behaviours, you've realised how complex they are, you've really checked with the client what their needs are, you've checked with any vulnerable clients who have special needs, and now you're actually doing the assessment and you're going to look at allocating the services and then coming into case management, which means keeping that referral, feedback, reevaluate. Then the next thing we're really working on is we may need to interview and do some programming intervention as well for some clients, not all. And then we're at the stage of referral. So we've got your client needs and associated services. Does anyone want to tell me if a client presented and they needed protection, what services do you know of that we could get for protection to be, if that was their need? What would you be looking at for protection? What services, if they're presented with needs for protection, what services would you actually look at getting this client? You've got to
police. Would you get the police involved? Yeah.
Yeah, particularly if it's high risk. So you may actually have to look at getting the, you could look at specialised domestic family violence. You could get them into a shelter. The assistance side, that can actually be many things. That can be some general assistance. It can be even assistance to just do the safety plan. Safety, physical and emotional security. What do you think there for services? Anyone?
Sorry, what did you say?
Safety, physical and emotional security.
I think counselling and things along that line, therapy and things like that, to build your emotional security, and your, I suppose physical security comes within as well as emotional security, because if you're not physically strong, and mentally strong, you're neither nor, if you know what I mean. So they both go hand in hand, and they'll both give you your safety in the long run, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. That's kind of why you just hit it on the nail of the head. That's why they've sort of grouped them, haven't they, Tim? So then what we've got now is other needs that you're going to have to look for services. You've also got the counselling, accommodation, and provision of assistance covers those 3 other circles that we just saw. So you got it spot on. So where we're at now is other needs that we may have to consider is if there is children involved, we've immediately now got a completely different scenario. The services are going to involve the welfare of children. That may require mandatory reporting. It may require quite a different lot of, yes, Cass?
Sorry, that's one of the first questions we ask is if there are children involved, because that can change
everything.
The whole approach, even the services you can access, because I know that there are like emergency accommodation where people can go, but children can't go there.
Yeah, can you fill us in a little bit then? Because you're right. This is entirely different.
So we have so I work for like a women's advocacy service. Oh, here she goes. Sorry. And we have places that offer emergency accommodation, but it's for the victims only. Children aren't allowed there because there are like unsettled adults, and the sort of the dynamics of the accommodation people aren't, necessarily stable. So it's
not child safe. Yeah, because you've got that re-exposure to the children, haven't you? From trauma.
Because you don't know what environment you're taking them into. So if it was like child friendly, it'd be more like enclosed, like separate accommodation, so they're not exposed to other women that might be beaten or under the influence of drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So there are organizations that won't take children, they'll only take the adult.
Yeah, and you're right about even the welfare. If we look underneath with legal and medical, straight away we're going to be looking at a paediatrician. So children have entirely different services, but under legal or medical, that's where we're going to actually look at if they are needing immediate medical. You may need to actually call an ambulance. You may actually need to call the police. And again, the safety plans is something that we're going to do tonight, is get into the safety plans. So what we're at now is you do need to look at, when you are assessing the needs and you're assessing the services, you've got to make a decision. Is this a crisis situation or is it long-term support? So what we've got to do is we've got to look at crisis situations is obviously the police. That's where you're going to maybe call an ambulance, you're going to call the police. Long-term situation is where we're going to look at things such as a counsellor, like Tim said. Crisis situation, though, you may actually need to get a domestic family violence specialist counsellor to meet them at the hospital. You may need social services involved immediately. So there are crisis counsellors, but a long-term counsellor wouldn't be. So what we've really got to look at here is making sure that what would we do for crisis situations. So I just want to stop sharing now and show you another thing that we've got. So what I'm showing you here is a link that I followed from your learner guide. And it's particularly worth looking at. It's the domestic violence crisis line. But this particular service really does explain what happens with crisis intervention. So this one's really worth following, guys. It's on page 59 of your learner guide, because crisis intervention meets needs that are probably the most critical. So it's really worth looking at. And again, here, some of the things that you're looking at, but this safety planning, which is why we've got to really do it tonight. So it's emergency accommodation. It's not just housing. It immediately has police emergency in there. So there's referrals to support services, but these are crisis support services, which are very different. And here they've got a lot of different things that are really, again, you can start going through here, guys. It's so quite interesting. So that's in your learner guide. And then they've got lots, again, people with disability. We chatted briefly about this tonight. I would really recommend you digging through this. I found it interesting. Aged. We've got all the multicultural, and they've gone and they've got a little bit of more information there, and that is the vulnerable people that we discussed. So this is worth looking at. Do you think you need a break, everybody? Yes? So what we're going to do, I'm going to stop the recording. All right, welcome back from your break, everybody. We had Footloose as a request. So I'm going to share the screen. Recording for the song. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so let's get back to sharing our screen, and we're going to keep going through the slides. Oh, that's not the screen. Why is it doing that? Hang on, guys. I'm going to just go back in and get rid of that screen and then come back to you and share. We might just go in as it is and just share it as a whole thing. So as we mentioned, it's really critical to look at, is this a crisis? Because it's going to have immediate response. And then we've got role plays. So what I'd like to do is offer you an opportunity to watch a short video. Last week, we looked at the first start, just the first little bit of our checklist of what you need to do for your role plays, about the establishing rapport, privacy, confidentiality, and everyone did great at that. And we can practice that later. But our next step tonight is we've really got to assess the client's needs. And that's where we're interviewing and asking sensitive questions. In doing the needs, we're needing to look at, is this a crisis? What's the safety issue? As you know, safety is the #1 priority for the client, for yourself, and all involved. And if we do assess that this is a safety risk, we've got to then respond. And then we've also got to then agree with the client to make a safety plan. So if we've assessed that there's an unsafe issue, well, what I wanted to do was go looking for you for a really good resource. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share a resource I found, and it's a government resource. Here we go. So this is put out by the Victorian, and I did some Googling for you. Family Safety Victoria started in 2021 to 2024 with a program where they're attempting to work on prevention. So I did actually look at this video, and I think it's really valuable. So I know that we chatted last week and a couple of people were concerned about, like, how do you do this safely? How do you ask safe questions? How do you actually assess quickly if there is danger? This is an 8-minute, very good risk assessment. So it's done intentionally as a teaching video. I'd like to show it now. So in a moment, I'm going to come back, stop the actual recording, but I do want this to be on for people at home to see, because it is a government resource that you can go to yourself. And as you can see right down here, there is so many other small, short videos that are very instructional if you are interested in doing more work around domestic family violence. So I'm going to come back to the stopping the sharing, and I'm going to stop the So I found that really informative because last week we were discussing about how do you softly put in this confidentiality when you've got someone who's very distressed? How do you actually be official but make them feel safe, not that you're ticking a box? I think you used the word, Karen. So I went searching for that, and I do think that fits the bill there quite well. I liked that she didn't say a lot. The other reason I wanted to get you a recording is that when we do the role play tonight, I don't really want anyone this late at night to play Priyanka, who actually has the same issues that this lady sort of has, financial. I'd really just like us all to practice being the counsellor, because I think taking on that the abuse persona is probably not a great thing for to do. But if we've watched it there, we can then just see the skills of the actual person who's doing the counselling. What did everyone think of that wonderful rating that she had on safety? Because you've got to somehow assess risk straight away. She gave her the scale of 1 to 5 for safety. What were your thoughts about that? Did anyone think it was a good way to give a scale, Karen?
I thought it was excellent because it was it gave her that ability to say, I'm doing okay right now.
3 right now, yep.
That right now, because I'm alive, I'm here, you know, that kind of thing. But then it gave her, like the counsellor, the opportunity to introduce, have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you were in a 4 or a 5? And suddenly she was like, yes. And that was actually, you know, last night. And that's why I feel good today, stuff. But it was a way of introducing without leading, without it being a leading question or anything else like that.
Yeah, and that's this part we're doing tonight, is we're trying to use interviewing skills to assess needs. And priority 1, did you notice as well, the woman to come in, the session needed to be short. She had to get out of there and pick up her child. So you may have very little time to assess risk, and your main job is to assess the level of risk and the intensity of risk. So that's what we're going to practice on, and also quickly get a safety plan done efficiently. That's probably your highest in priority, Cass.
I think it was good that, so she didn't have much information, so she wasn't aware, but she became aware of so much by using such simple language, even offering the way she offered the interpreter. I think that
I wanted you to see that being culturally aware. So she's straight into the need.
But by having an interpreter brings a third party into knowing, and that's where she went with, I just wanted it to be private. Like, she didn't want yet another person knowing, because she's already giving that information to one person. So feeding someone else that information could then, you know.
So you're right. So she made
herself aware of a lot of things when she wasn't aware, but she became aware in that moment. Like,
and did you notice she used the statement "it's okay" several times?
Yes. And
so what we were looking at was rapport building quickly, building safety quickly, building trust quickly. That was done very well, I'd say, on using your micro skills efficiently and effectively. So I would recommend, if this is an area, there's a lot more to look at on that page. The other thing that I liked is that she mentioned that it's a tactic, but she didn't really go into it too much detail. She just said that's a tactic that is often used. So she didn't explain abuse. She didn't get into it. She then just moved straight to the next point, which is duty of care. And then when she mentioned about that things are good after the night, she said that's part of the cycle. She was just validating and informing with a couple of words. Nothing too heavy. The woman was stressed. She's not going to be able to be educated, but she was informed really well. Yes, Cass?
Sorry. So, you know, when she said to the counsellor said, that sounds very controlling. Are you allowed to describe a behavior, or are you, like, I know you can validate that that's what that sounds like it's hard for you, but can you like identify that behavior too? Is that
I think it was given permission because she used the word control first. He controls
Okay,
where I go, doesn't let me go home. So she didn't insinuate or
Didn't use that word
instigate language. Yeah, that was actually reflection and validation, but I really like that you pulled that up because if we don't, we could actually misguide that as almost her
Like
giving
if
her
you would say
assessment.
someone, well, this has now got a label, when you might not want to start giving things like
If it's their word repeated, I would say that's okay. But if they've just described the behavior and then you're going to categorize it as, well, that's controlling behavior, but she said he controls my money, controls where I go. I'd say it was almost a good validation and paraphrase.
But it was okay. It was okay for
her
her to identify that behavior because the word had already been used.
Yeah, never interject your own assessment.
That's
so
where you
good
need
to say
your active listening and
yes,
pick up when you can grab what they say and use it to your best of your ability, I guess.
Yeah. Peter? Yeah, Peter?
Yeah, I found it quite confronting when he was talking about 5, that the kill bit, that's but I guess it really brings it into brings it into this is the situation.
I'm trying to do that too with you tonight, is let you know, what does assessing risk mean?
Because
assessing safety,
quite
what
extreme,
does crisis mean? That's what
so 5 is life and death. And the other thing was by her giving her feedback saying, well, you're making reference to that. Yes, that's something typical that happens. It's validating that she's not alone. This is something that happens a lot of the time. So you're not on your own. This is something that we deal with. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, depersonalize it. I thought that too. I thought that was a really good way of making it a situation or a behavior, but not actually, because as you know, there can be that deserving. She didn't address either way, but somehow she really did keep restoring the language she used, which was minimal, restored safety, I'd say, really very psychological safety. So I think that's what we're needing to practice, is how do we now go into our next role play and use that reflective, but we need to now get into this safety, guys. We need to look at it. So I want to share a couple of things with you, and I have gone digging as well. So safety plan, here we go. This is the safety plan that you've got available at First Access, and I'll show you how it runs. And then I've gone and found you an alternative just so that you can have some a bigger understanding. As she mentioned, she made a smaller safety plan. So you may need to only go to some of these points if you've only got a few minutes. You may not want to do the whole plan. You're going to need to be effective, but I'll show you the whole plan. And this is what we're going to be doing in the role plays, is actually doing a safety plan. You've got questions here. If you needed to leave the home quickly, where would you go? And you'll write it in here. And you will be doing this in your role play. It might be my Auntie Jane's. So straight away, you're giving the person strategies and a plan. Who's your emergency contacts? I'll go through it a little bit more quickly, but you've got, if there was someone that you can trust to help you, call the police. And what you're actually asking for here as well with the police, can that person help you leave your home if needed? I've had to be in this situation and be that support network too. And it needs to happen quickly. So what they'll often ask here is, can you give that person a code word? And it might be, hey, we're heading out for ice cream. So you've got to set this up in advance to know who is the person that you're going to call and tell them you need the police, and you're going to need a code word because you're not maybe even going to be able to say it. This is where we're looking at the children and what supports they need. And this is the part that we saw in that circle where we're needing to discuss. Children have entirely different needs. If children are involved, we're looking at different crisis needs and different long-term needs. Do you have access to the phone and internet? In some cases, clients can be given mobile phones, prepaid, with a SIM card on the spot. There's your code word. Do you have access to other communication channels? You're looking at transport. They could be given, and that's that need for economic finance that we chatted about. That person could be given a small amount of money or transport vouchers before they leave. If they don't have actual access, that might be part of the safety plan to give them that economics at the time. You'll be discussing an escape bag. You look at finances, about money. You're looking at, this is now the supports that we talked about that we would look for referral. So you've got these here. We mentioned Centrelink, Child First, Child Protection. Some of these are obviously going to be long-term. The police is going to be critical. Mental health service may actually need to be immediate help as well. And that's the type of referrals that we're looking at doing. So then they sign off on the safety plan, and this has to be completed as part of your role play. So what I wanted to do there is say that that's a safety plan that sort of just runs from woe to go. So I wanted to do a bit of digging and see what was out there and give you another version of a safety plan. So I'm going to share another screen, and where is my, don't think this is it. Let's see. Nope. Oh, actually it is there because it's behind. So.
Karen, can I just ask something? Do you have a distress tolerance safety plan?
I don't think that they have one in First Access. Is that what you use in your center?
I've got something here that I was given through from a service provider for myself, and I can't sort of share it because it has the names and contacts of them on it.
Can you share how it's made up? What format it might look like?
So it's just got your name, and if I feel unsafe or at risk of harming myself, I'll take the full
okay.
actions. And it's got your distress tolerance skills. So it's not only for immediate danger and things, but it's also something you can do if, like, when you have those indicators or those behaviors, the way to manage that.
That's fantastic, because I'm pretty sure that would be the next step that one of the domestic family violence counsellors would take.
Yeah,
and you're right.
It's just interesting, and it does have the scales on there and the goals. And yeah, just it's only short and sweet, like it's like a 1-page.
That's amazing, because our job is to assess rather risk to themselves, others, and ourselves. So that's amazing. And again, as you said, if we're dealing with that psychological, if one of the risk factors that we're dealing with is self-harm, then that is something we're going to have to look at doing. That's brilliant. I hadn't thought of that. So this safety plan is a slightly bit different. It's actually got safety during a violent incident. Now, this is just for the women. It is for everybody. Please don't think I've just taken that. It should say women and men. But what they've done here is they've actually divided it up to actually specific events. So that's step 1. Then step 2, they've got safety when preparing to leave, and they've got different steps. So here, what I liked about here is the person may only want to do this part. So this is kind of a bit efficient. Safety in your own residence. So they might just say, I'm not ready to talk about leaving yet. Now, the whole safety plan could be very intimidating. This is a 1-page, one-stop, one situation. So I think this is useful. And then they've got safety when violent restraining order, just specifically involving that. Safety regarding drug and alcohol use. Safety with emotional health. There you go. Go, Cass. And leaving the violent partner. And again, what they've got here is they've actually given you a list. Because the other one actually just says, could you pack a bag? This one is so specific. It actually gives the people the information and the tick list. So what do you think of that specific safety plan? Short and sweet. The one page would fit a situation if you were involved with drugs and alcohol, but you wouldn't waste somebody's time with that if they weren't. If they said, yes, I want to actually pack a bag immediately, you've got a user-friendly list. I quite like that one. I think it could cut to the chase. Mel?
I did like that one that you just shared.
Me too.
Is there any way, like just for our own reference, or is there any way that we would be able to get a link or something to print that out?
Yeah, I can actually come back now, and if you want to, you can see, I'll share again and I'll try and then go back. I went looking to try and get us some more user-friendly.
Can it be attached to the recording when we get the recording?
Yeah, I'll just share. Can you actually see? So again, I went government, guys. And I went Western Australia. So this is actually, and they call it the CRARMF practice tool. So our government has got some amazing resources. I do some Googling. I'll definitely get this, but it is a government, and I'll get it and I'll take it now and I'll get it in. If I put this in the chat box, will that be helpful? Let me do that.
Yep.
And I'll get it in there. I think what's important, there you go, is to do things your way. We're chatting about that, Karen. You said, what way would you do it? You need to do it your way. And Karen, you didn't really want to throw in at the front this privacy and confidential, and you don't have to. What worked in the video we saw is that woman was definitely focused and person-centered. And I think if we get too worried about how we're going to deliver the message, we lose focusing on the person and giving the message of safety. So now we're going to practice some of our role play. So we're going back to sharing our screen, and we're going back to sharing the role play. I hope. No, it keeps giving me everything I don't want tonight, guys. It's not me, it's IT. Okay, I'll just go to the main screen. So our second part of the role play is you've got to get interviewing, which hopefully that one I found you on the YouTube shows you that by interviewing, it doesn't mean asking a lot of questions. The actual interviewer hardly spoke. Make what you say matter. You're going to use sensitive, and I'd say that she definitely had a sensitive tone, open-ended questions. You identify the area of concern. She did. She talked about it. She said not being able to leave your home, the violence and the money. And then she didn't elaborate. And then she got the agreement for the safety plan. So the situation that you've got this scenario to do this in is supporting Priyanka. I'll give you a quick rundown so you don't have to read it all, but I did want to put it in the slides in case anyone wishes to return to read it or read it through your notes, or anyone who's watching this can. The role play you're actually playing is similar to what we just watched, and this particular woman is isolated at home. She's not allowed to get a job or work or have money, and she's actually feeling very depressed, and she is suicidal. So we have a high-risk client. She's been coming to Michelle, the support worker, which you'll be playing, and that's all I'm really interested in. They have a strong, trusting support relationship already. We did that last week. That's been done. Today, when she comes in, though, she wants to present the safety plan. So what I'd like to do is just talk about who would like to pair up and practice a safety plan. Again, we don't have to go through it exactly as you've seen it on First Access. I'd like you to just start to look at how are you going to even ask permission to do a safety plan? How would you, forget all the privacy and confidentiality, we did that last week, but if you wish to practice it again, do so. But I would go straight to actually assessing the risk, ask a few questions, see if you can use that rating of 1 to 5, 5 being in danger. find out how immediate the danger is, what type of danger is. So would you like to pair up everybody and get into some groups? Mel?
Hang on.
Can we possibly do it in more than pairs? So then
We can do it as one big group. Last week was amazing.
Yeah,
You can all practice asking parts to each other if you so wish, because what we're really wanting to do is just ask those immediate interviewing questions that assess risk.
Maybe asking the questions we might want to ask and then maybe giving the answers we might be curious to get.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So would you like to stay here and practice together as a big group? What I don't wish to do this late at night is have someone be Priyanka and be distressed. So take time out, Tim, please do. Anyone who needs time out, we're not going to escalate this. We're just going to practice the counselling skills. So who would like to be the first counsellor? Anybody want to actually, are we still sharing? I'll stop sharing. Who would like to actually go first to say, well, that seems really bad. I'm tired. That seems like a very difficult situation that you're in. And I'd like to ask you about your immediate safety if you wish. However you want to word this. Who'd like to practice? Anybody? Because we've got Priyanka and we do have to do this in our role play. Anyone want to have a go?
I guess I could.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Would anyone like to be Priyanka? Karen, do you want to do that?
My dog is having a sad, so I can make my dog Priyanka.
Yes, because we don't want to do too much dialogue on there. Go for
there
it.
you go.
So how are you going to actually ask sensitive, open-ended questions to assess risk quickly?
Okay, so I'm going to say thank you for coming today. Take a seat, make yourself comfortable the best you can. And can you tell me, do I know what she's brought me, why she's there?
So you've gone and built rapport, you've checked with her, you've had her coming for a while, and then you've asked how she's going, and Priyanka has told you that she's very distressed and wants to build a safety plan. And now you're going to need to find out how unsafe she is and what does distressed mean.
Okay, so
assessing risk.
So can you tell me a little bit more about what's been happening since we last met?
Perfect. What's been happening since we last met? Yep. And so Karen's going to let you know that she's in quite a bit of danger.
Okay. So how would you identify danger? I've forgotten her name. Karen? Okay, so she has identified danger as in, are we going by the one we watched?
Okay, Karen, I'll take over.
So, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do a victim like that.
Okay.
I can't do it.
So I'm just going
to
say that I'm afraid to go home. I'm not sure that I'm actually safe there.
Okay, so can you tell me why you're not feeling safe at home?
Things got escalated last night and I have my children at their auntie's and I don't want to go home. I need to get a safety plan happening.
Okay, so are your children safe where they are for the moment?
They are. They don't need help. It's just me.
It's just you?
Yep.
Okay, so now I'm going to go blank.
That's okay. This sounds critical, doesn't it? It sounds like it's a crisis. So you could even go straight.
So do you feel like you're in immediate danger? Are you in danger of returning home?
So, and if I say yes, I am, then you're going to actually offer to look at involving police and the
So do you think that you might need to have the police involved to get you home safely, to gather the things you need to escape?
Well, even the AVO, or
to have an intervention order. So sorry, just to go off. So what would she do then if she was to get the AVO? Would she have to leave the house, or would they make? Sorry,
basically you would just take it as a referral to the police.
Okay, so would we bring the police to the organisation?
Well, you could actually work with her, but you'd now be escalating to a supervisor.
Okay.
You'd now actually be also saying that you're going to have to.
Well, would you mind if if I brought my supervisor in to the room to sit and talk with us as well, and
see how we can actually and get you safe and get
the disclosure still remains, even though there's a third person. Are you happy for me to have a third person in the room to assist you as best we can?
Yep. So once you know it's a O police ABO, you're going to get a supervisor in. So what you're going to do is get them to come in, and then you're going to work at the strategy of getting that service and that referral. And that might mean that someone from that service actually takes her there, or that they actually come and do the interviewing. All police stations in Queensland now actually have an actual domestic family violence room that is purposely.
So if she was to leave the organisation to go to the police station, is it safe for someone from the organisation to escort her to the police station?
You would have to follow your procedures and policies of the company.
Okay.
So because you're a support workers can assist. So it depends what your role is, what your job role is, what the business's actual procedures are in some.
And identifying the risk of what if you pulled out the car park and he was there.
Exactly, which is why it becomes a senior. So you're now you've identified the risk. The first referral you're going to do is to your senior management. So you can stay within your limits. Yeah. And you're going to actually get them involved. You're going to have to breach confidentiality if they've said I'm in immediate danger. And that's
and so when you've identified that they are in immediate danger, you've obviously got to ask them if it's okay to bring your supervisor in while they stay and continue the conversation, or I mean she might run.
You're always going to actually keep safety, psychological safety as your first thing. So you're going to say, please do know you're safe here.
Yeah.
Because that person's heightened. They've just told you I'm not safe. Say you're safe here. I'm here to help look after you. I have a duty of care to protect you from harm, and I take that seriously. I'm going to do all I can to keep your safety my priority. This is where you're using your language to help that person recognize that you are part of their support team, especially if it's immediate crisis, and say that our standard procedure in this situation is to increase the support for you. And I'm going to actually increase that by getting my supervisor to come and be part of our support team. And we're going to push strategies. So what you're doing is you're just constantly letting them know that you are safe. We're here for you. And by we, I mean myself, my supervisor in this company. In this situation, we need to increase your support team immediately. And I've got a specialist counsellor here who specialises in domestic family violence, who's also a social worker, and I'd like to bring her in the room so that we can come up with your safety strategy and we can get your crisis intervention happening immediately. You're safe. So it's about that language. So you're referring internally. You may refer in.
So you don't need to say, look, with this safety plan has to be written on paper. Like we can have the discussion.
So now we've got me and I'm Priyanka, and that's the crisis stuff. And now Priyanka says no. She just says, I just want to do a safety plan with you, please. And that's what this role play is about. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I've shown you the standard one of your first access. That's the one you're going to fill in. You've also seen the client needs, which was broken up into 4 sections, which is really pretty much how we've broken up tonight. That first little section was identify. What indicators are you looking at? Might be exactly words they've said to you. It might be things you've seen, bruises. And then so you've looked at the indicators and you've assessed what those needs are. And then you've looked at the priority of needs and the risk. And then you're taking action for referral, either immediate, internal, external, short-term, long-term. In this case, for Priyanka's role play, what you're being asked to do is complete a safety plan so that she can leave She's determined that her risk is not high risk, it's not immediate, but she's told you she's at risk and wants a plan, and your job is to get that plan happening. So that's where you'll ask the questions of the plan and you'll work through that page, which I can put up on the screen and share, but if everybody's pretty tired, we can move through the last few slides. You're more than welcome to use learner support, which I put at the very beginning, the links. Come practice, guys. We can get into our Zooms and we can share the screen. We can do the role plays and practice your professional skills so that there is no concern that you aren't ready to do the role plays. Yeah. So we can run through it. Practice makes perfect, and you can just become more proficient at your professional skills. Being a safety plan, you saw the soft way that that lady in the video that I showed you from the Victorian government handled it. I'd really recommend watching it again. So she was addressing a safety plan at the time, and you're right, Cass, at that point, she then needs to get the pen to the paper, ask the questions, fill it in, fill it in. You are now in the paperwork stage. And she did say to this lady, we can do as much or as little of the paperwork as you want. We can stop at any time. Did you hear how she threw that pace in?
I like how she said that. And,
she did a great job.
The second template you showed us how it's sort of each page is a different sort of section. Like you can pick your page, like, so she didn't need to fill in, you don't need to fill in everything, just what's relevant. And I mean, one day might be different. One day might be, I need to get out the door, I'm in crisis. The next day might be, I'm going to prepare myself. So you can go to what's relevant.
Exactly, because one whole page was specific to children and children's needs, if there is, and that is obviously not for everybody. So you're not wasting someone's time who can't think straight and has told you they're in not immediate danger, but they've said they're not safe. So I'd really consider watching that again, and then
would you take a copy of the safety plan? So say if you've written a safety plan with them, would you that let them take a copy? Would you keep a copy for yourself?
You'd really want to keep a record of that. They're signing it.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, what if she went home and she lost it and then she come back, like, I don't have my safety plan and I don't know what to do. And you don't want to go through it all again with them.
Some people will choose not to take it because it is going to be evidence. But what's happening is you've got the strategy, you've got the information, which is also why you really just want to go to the section they need. And that might be to pack the bag, find the code word, tell the person what the code word is, and get your monies together. And so you've really got to assess the needs of the person, which is your interviewing skills. Otherwise, you could be filling in a lot of paperwork unnecessarily that's really not getting to the purpose. And you're right, they may leave without a copy. It's a mental copy. You're definitely keeping a copy because they are signing the bottom of the document, and you'll see that. So,
and you can always go through it. You could always revise when they come back and see you next time, just so it's clear in their mind.
Absolutely.
Revise over. So do you know, like, how are things been this week? Okay, so if you feel like you're leaning towards this way a bit more, do you want to just go over this and have a look what you have prepared so it's fresh in your mind again, so you don't go, where am I in that moment? Is that?
Yes, yeah, because it is an assessment tool. And that's where we had those other slides where it talked about assessing the needs, assessment tool, ongoing assessment. You're reviewing, this is case management, so you're correct. You'll follow up on the last session, like you said, not only how are you this week since I saw you last, what's been happening since we did the safety plan last. So you are wanting to pick up on that last issue and find out as well, have things escalated? You're now doing some more interviewing skills to assess the new level of risk, because that's your priority one here. So what we can do is look at what else we need to share for the slides. And I'll just stop on my fancy sharing, which wasn't working. So please get into Priyanka, look at the safety, and please do book with me if you want to do some run-throughs. The next slide that we've got to really look at here, when you're responding to the client's needs, you need to actually identify any limitations. And by that is, you're making sure that you seek assistance, whoops, that's not happening, from the right companies. See this technology here. You need to negotiate and agree with them as to what they want to do. And you saw that done several times. There were so many, 3 or 4 check-ins at that lovely lady did while she was doing their assessment risk. Each stage, before she moved to the next stage, she asked for permission. The information, and then you've got to make sure your records are accurate. So what we're now at is the referral stage. You've consulted with the person. You're going to explain why the referral is needed. For the case that we had last week, the referral was to see a GP because she was physically injured. If it was emergency, as we explained, the referral might be to the police because it's a crisis, or the referral might be to counselling. We discussed all the needs and the possible referrals, and now we've got their consent and we're looking at it from holistically. Again, when we're doing referrals, we've got to follow policies and procedures. We've got to look at all of the individuals and the stakeholders, and we've got to make sure we've got incident reports. So this is all now about the paperwork side as well. Their current goals, they come in that week. We've come up with a strategy, which Priyanka's goal was, I want to make a safety plan. I'm ready to actually consider leaving. I feel strong. The strategy was to make the safety plan. And then the next week, you're going to look at modification, as Cass said. You're going to revisit this. And you're going to make any modifications necessary. And particularly if you're going to assess the risk and it has escalated. Once you make that modification, in that next session, you've got completely new goals. Now you might have some new strategies, and fingers crossed, for some people that it's de-escalated and the crisis is not there, and we're now looking at the goals might become long-term goals, not crisis accommodation, but maybe just some homes that are long-term supports, some home and housing. The other part of the role play, after you've worked with Priyanka, you've gone and assessed for the danger, you've assessed the risk, you've assessed the strategies, you've got permission, you're putting plans in place. You are looking at the complexity and urgency. You've informed the client about the support, and you've worked on the referrals, and the case management means that you're going to continue referring and checking. The other role play that you've got for this is Oliver. Anyone who wants to run through Oliver with me in your learner support, by all means, I'd be happy to. I just want to discuss something about Oliver's case study that you've got coming up, or rather role play. The difficulty here is that Oliver is saying that he is in danger. He actually has said that he even feels that his partner may follow him and come to the centre. So what we need to identify on this last role play is that if we are assessing risk, and duty of care is risk for the client, ourselves, and all involved, this last role play means that there are people in that centre who are potentially at risk. So the last role play is going to be where you create a strategy to put in place safety measures for the company. And that is that you are going to speak to a supervisor, you're going to make case notes, you're going to put an incident report, and then they are going to have strategies where security will actually be informed and increased at the centre. So now we've got safety risks for yourself. So we've got support and negotiation, and it is a continual cycle. You start with your rapport, you've got to analyse the situation, propose, debate, come up to some agreement, and then close again. Back next session, rapport, analyse, propose, debate. In this cycle, what you're analysing in this situation is the safety, the level of risk, and the client's needs. That's what you're analysing straight away after rapport. And you're always coming to an agreement, closing, and then building it back again. That's our little loop. We do have, there is a link. I do want to give you a trigger warning with this link. I'm not going to play this video. I looked at it for you. It is quite intense. Consider whether or not you'd want to watch that if you do have the link come up with the video. Perhaps watch it in the daytime with company. I found it a little bit confronting because it's just so real. Whereas when we were watching the support worker counsellor, that was very challenging, but this is definitely because children are involved, and it's yeah. So consider whether that's appropriate for you to watch when you get the link, and consider having support when you do choose, if you choose to watch it. So, any thoughts about tonight? Tonight is a big, heavy one because we're looking at indicators of risk. We're looking at what we would see, some of the behaviours, and then we're looking at how we would prioritise them as far as safety, and then how we're going to support the person. Does anyone want to give any feedback on tonight's session? Has it been helpful, informing?
Yeah.
What do you think, Jess? Have you come out with a different perspective, a different priority?
Yes, I think it's definitely opened my eyes up a lot. Actually, I've done a lot of writing.
Good for
tonight.
you.
So I've tried to just keep a lot. I learn best. Yeah, I've sort of written a lot down because there's a lot, really, I guess, just a lot of information to absorb, and I didn't really want to miss much of the information. But yeah, it's been really, really good. Actually, it's been a great night. I'm excited actually to get in.
Oh,
There's
yay.
some other role plays, but I'm excited to get into these role plays.
Yeah. What we've got to consider, everyone here too, is that you may not choose to go into this area, but in our life history, we may have someone in our immediate social circle who needs us to be able to be responsive to their needs, and they may have crisis needs. I do think that this is a skill set that's very valuable. So you're right, Jess. I'm glad you're excited, because even if you don't enter into this part of the industry, it's a really good skill set to have. Karen?
I haven't absorbed a thing.
Haven't you?
Nope. I've dealt with domestic violence almost daily for the last 9 years with my work with the courts, the criminal courts. I've learned how to completely tune it out. I've taken nothing in.
Were there any strategies on communication that you saw that were, because last week you were concerned about how you actually mentioned the privacy and confidentiality. Was it interesting to watch how she did that?
That was excellent the way she did that. It was very natural the way she just slipped that in there, and there was no scripting. Like, it really didn't feel scripted at all. It felt natural as a natural consequence of her question and answer that she would then say, and you realise, I just want you to be aware that if this happens, then I must report. In New South Wales, we have mandatory reporting for DV if there's kids that have witnessed it. So,
well, then you did get something, which is great, because that was your biggest concern last week. It's like, do you have to just say it off the bat? How do you do it and be personal and be caring? So I'm glad you got something, because that was it's more about you. The rest may not be appropriate. It might not be really a priority for you at the moment. So I think that we all get different things. I just want to make sure that everyone has come away getting something that's given them an interpersonal skill and a professional skill that they feel they could do a little bit better, more easily, more naturally, more comfortably, and that you've been able to see also, even if you can assess the risk better and use that scale that she had on the 0 or 1 to 5, then that's amazing. That's really going to be useful. Mel, what do you think? Did you feel you weren't triggered at the beginning? How are you feeling now? You still feeling, because you said it was making you feel more confident tonight. You felt like you're getting more tools.
You can hear me, right? I'm
Yeah.
always confused with this. Yeah, no, nothing's triggering. It's not triggering at all. It's just making me more, pushing me more towards wanting to help.
Really?
Because unlike some of the others, this is likely where I would like to end up.
Well, hopefully it's been informative
Mm.
and it's let you know the order and the priority of where to put your attention when dealing with someone, because we're dealing with a time pressured situation, especially if it's a critical. So if it can actually assist you in that way, that's great. Anyone who wants to stay back after this, I can help with the course and we can chat about booking in. So if there is something specific that you want to do, practice a skill or go over the role plays or anything, so we can do that. So shall we wrap it up there, everyone? It sounds like everyone got something out of it. Hugh, you've been really quiet. Hugh, you've been typing and writing down again? You've been making notes? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I've been making notes. But I've just been multitasking tonight and a bit distracted.
Do you feel
I actually do have a question that I'd like to ask, but maybe that can wait till after the class.
Sure.
So
hang back and we can go through that.
okay.
Mahalia, how did you go? Do you feel more confident in your professional practice from the information tonight?
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot to take in.
It's a lot, isn't it? I even got tired.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of just listening in the background. Yeah, I'm trying to not get too involved in it, like, you know, otherwise I will get triggered and stuff. So I'm like kind of just listening at the moment, and I've got coursework, like I'm a bit behind with the course, so I'm trying to catch up at the same time.
Okay,
so I'm like,
well,
at least if I log in
about
and
the learner support to give you that confidence there.
Yeah.
Hamid, are you with us? I haven't heard anything from you. No. Well, hopefully he got something out of tonight.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good. There you are, buddy. How did you go? Did you enjoy this evening? Was it useful?
Yeah, that was very good. That was
Is
good, especially that interview.
Yep.
That was very good.
Okay.
And yeah, I learned many things from it.
You have learned. That's great. Well, hopefully everyone watching at home has as well. Great contribution, everyone. Thank you for sticking to the topic because there is a lot to unpack. And I'll say good evening to everybody that we're doing the recording to. And